All right, welcome everyone. And thank you all for coming here to celebrate the release of 3 of our Trio House Press fall books, Wayfinding by Renee Gilmore, Girl in a Forest by Elline Lipkin, and Sing Me a Circle by Samina Najmi. I'm Chris Biak, the executive editor of Trio House Press, and my associate editor, Natasha Kane, is in the chat with you on YouTube. She'll be relaying questions to us after the readings, so please put your questions in the chat and we will get to them as we are able. All of these books were produced by a team of editors and volunteers, and I'd like to especially thank Richard Terrell, Cynthia Villa, who both served as editors. Richard served as editor for Renee's book, and Cynthia Villa served as editor for Samina Najmi's book. And I'd also like to thank our cover designers, Joel Coggins and Bonia Z. And of course, I have to thank Natasha because Natasha and I both edit, but she also handles all of the production team, and she does a fantastic job. We do have another title releasing today called Seeking You by Jung Ho-seung, a Korean poet. It was translated by Brother Anthony of Tays, who could not be here tonight because of lots of time zone issues, but we will be releasing a video of him reading with the author and with Christopher Merrill a little bit later this month. So please stay tuned for that. You can see all of our titles on our website, which Natasha will link to in the chat. And for those of you tonight, we have a special deal, 24 hours. You can get 25% off any Trio House Press title, and Natasha will give you the code and the link to do that. So without further ado, I would like to begin with this beautiful book, Wayfinding by Renee Gilmore. I'll just read her bio for you and then she can get started. Renee Gilmore is a multi-genre writer, essayist, and poet. She writes about her experiences growing up in a family of car enthusiasts, mechanics, racers, and collectors, and navigating a family full of secrets. She fearlessly explores the illusion of happiness. Through her writing and lived experience, Renee proves that resilience can be practiced both by accident and intention. Renee holds degrees from the University of New Mexico and Hamline University and identifies as a person with a disability. Her work has appeared in many literary journals, including the Louisville Review, Fatal Flaw, Pink Panther magazine, among others. She lives in suburban Minneapolis with her husband, Stephen, and works in corporate learning and development. Let's welcome Renee.
Thanks so much, Chris, for that warm welcome. And I want to start out by saying I have a heart full of gratitude to you, Chris, and Natasha for believing in me and believing in Wayfinding. So tonight I would like to share a piece out of Wayfinding. Rather than giving you snippets from several stories, I'm going to share a very pivotal story, both in the book and in my life. So tonight I'm going to share with you a Bible story. Dear Phil, in the beginning, I noticed how those fine lines crinkled around your eyes when you smiled. In the beginning, you smiled a lot. You were so handsome in that way that people call rugged. Time and experience had revised the smooth landscape of your face and body. The spot on your right shoulder had a texture like soft fur. From the time you dumped your motorcycle, you said. Your left knee had 3 small white stripes of a scar, if one looked closely. In the beginning, I thought that thin scar running through your left eyebrow was sexy. I spotted you first. You came into that 50s place in Albuquerque one night when I was bartending. You walked in with my friend Tom and sat at the bar. I was wearing a white shirt with an ugly red bow tie. I was supposed to wear a paper hat, but that was just too ridiculous. You ordered a drink, I think it was a gin and tonic. I liked the sound of your voice, and you left me a decent tip. You are a friend of a friend of a friend. You had references. I checked. I thought maybe you could be the refuge from the mess my life had become. You were so different from the boys I had known at the university. I slowly eased into your orbit, joining your guys, men really, and their girlfriends who coalesced into a protective screen around you. I listened to you speak of your deep faith, and I thought, maybe he's a good one. Perhaps I didn't think that at all. Rather, I may have thought, wow, he's hot. I wonder if he's single. In the beginning, you were such a gentleman, Southern gentleman, you would correct me. You often carried your tiny Bible in your back pocket and would laugh. Don't worry, I'm not here to convert you. Even if that was true, you kept Bible verses on the tip of your tongue like spears. Sometimes you deploy them during our conversations. That was in the beginning, and it was good. You were an adult man, and my 21-year-old self was impressed. You cooked me salmon and steaks and acted like the adult boyfriends on TV. We would spend Saturday mornings lying in bed, drinking coffee if you didn't get called into work at the trucking company, and we dreamed of all the places we would travel. I had studied abroad in Ireland, but you had never been out of the country, not even to Mexico. That seemed to irritate you a little. I seemed to irritate you a little. I started going to church with you on Sundays once in a while. Then I started going with you every week. The long sermons about women obeying their husbands and all the available celestial punishments made me uncomfortable. Once, as I was leaving a service, a woman made a snippy comment to me about wearing pants in church. I had not yet cracked the code of what it meant to be a woman, your woman, in the context of your church. You said you were going to help me. Well, you and God didn't have a problem with me sleeping at your place most nights. It was easier than having you call me every night when I was at my place and ask, who's there with you? Or have you show up in my little studio apartment and pound on the brown steel door until I answered. You were not Jesus wanting to come in and forgive my sins. The woman who lived next door gave me a small, sad smile when I saw her in the laundry room. Once, you were pretty out of control and bellowed in front of my locked door that you had a knife and you were coming back with a gun. I stood on my balcony shaking. Above me, my neighbor, the cop, was grilling. I could smell the chicken and green peppers on his little hibachi and hear the clank of beer bottles being set on concrete. He yelled down and said it was sounding a little rough at my place. He asked if I wanted him to call it in, and I said, no, it'll be fine. He's just had a rough week. Damage knows damage, and you soaked into my pores like fragrant oil, warm and familiar, and bled the hope from my bones. You were the wolf sleeping with the lamb in a queen-size bed. You had become your own character in the Old Testament, announcing decrees and punishments like a modern King Herod. When I saw your jaw working, that vein pumping in your temple, I knew that your release, your version of the promised land, was just ahead. Driving to church in your clean red car Sunday after Sunday, I was not allowed to change the radio station, even though I detested country music, or at least I thought I did, before I met you. You sprained my index finger once, yanking it backward when I absent-mindedly reached over to turn up the volume. Your corrections always came swiftly, delivered with slaps and chapter and verse on everything I did wrong. I had given up saying, please stop. Still, you were my savior, delivering me from evil until you weren't. I realized that I was no longer worshiping a higher power in order to be saved. I was worshiping you and praying that I would not be destroyed. One day, I woke up, and for no particular reason, I was done being crucified. I tried explaining this to you using my secular language, and you didn't, or claimed you didn't, understand. But now, I'm using your Bible with all its words and stories to explain. Let's start with this. Like the Apostle Paul, the scales fell from my eyes, and I was ready to believe, just not in you. You had written your own commandments and consequences filled with words like submit and repent, and told me all the time that you're the one God had chosen to cast out my demons. You gaslit me. You are a false prophet. You convinced me that I was the sinner, the unclean one. You curated your group of disciples, your guys, men like you who love Jesus, beer, and football, and worshiped your message of faith, loyalty, and retribution. There were more than 12, and they sat with you for supper, as they knew it wouldn't be the last. They were there for hear you share the good news. But then the day came, and I could see you so clearly. You collected my misdeeds, my transgressions, and pulled them behind you like battle chains dragging in the dust. You said I invited Satan into my heart, and you taunted me for being so weak. I knew when you were coming for me, red-faced, lips pursed, breathing heavily, nostrils flared like a horse before a race. I thought, tell me, are you using your fist to drive out Satan or to punish me for letting him in? Your apologies to me later were thin, transitory, like confessing to the passing wind. There were bruises and injuries I couldn't cover up with makeup, especially in the heat of Albuquerque. You came clean to your believers about what you did, again, and the mask you showed them was a study in contrition. I guess I got carried away, boys. I'll have to pray about it. In truth, I was the only one praying for deliverance. That upstairs neighbor was my angel in a black shirt and a badge. That night you said you were going to send me to hell where I belonged. You've been drinking way more than usual. The puffed lip and the bruises that tattooed my ribs and wrists told the story when you were finally forced to open that door. You were a three-striker. Not that it mattered in the late 80s. You were sentenced to a 30-day exile, not in the desert, but behind bars. You sent me impassioned letters about how remorseful you were and how things were going to be different this time. I was the love of your life. I was the only one who could help you be a man of God. I was the only one who could quiet your urges. Each letter was more desperate than the one before it. I did not write back. I did not accept your calls, collect or otherwise. I could feel you seething 6 miles away. When you were released more than 10 days early, I did not drive your red car to pick you up, and you made me pay for that. You had learned nothing during your exile but terrifying new ways to use your fists. You were brimming with arrogance and maybe, as you said, the full power of the Holy Spirit. Who knows? You were convinced that you could part the seas for the unbelievers and lead them to redemption. You were convinced you could do a lot of things. I looked forward to seeing you try to part those seas and drown. And you did, in your own way, when 3 strikes became 4 and you went to prison. John 8:36. If the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. All that remained after everything was for me to cast off your chains and unravel your doctrine and dogma. I knew it by heart. Every word had been pounded into me. As I started to heal, I dismantled it, page by page, verse by verse. I rearranged the pile of your words, parables, and psalms into stories of joy, life, and forgiveness. I would hide my light no more.
Thank you so much, Renee. That was so amazing. Oh, I loved it. Great on the
Thank you.
page to hear it aloud. Renee has a release event tomorrow night in Minneapolis at Inkwell Books. So, and as with all of our authors, if you follow us on social media, you can find out where our authors are reading and all sorts of good news, that kind of thing. So, good luck tomorrow, Renee. That was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, so onward to poetry. We're having kind of a poetry sandwich today. And so this is what's in the middle. A girl in a forest with a beautiful fern on the front. If you saw the slideshow in the beginning, you saw Eileen's unboxing video. So and so I'll read Eileen's bio and she can read us some poetry. Elline Lipkin is a poet, nonfiction writer, and academic. She holds an MFA and PhD in creative writing and literature and has been a postdoctoral scholar at UC Berkeley and a research scholar with UCLA's for the Study of Women. Her first book, The Errant Thread, was chosen by Evan Boland for the Corey Press First Book Award. Her second, Girls Studies, is a part of the SEAL Studies series. She has been in residence at Yaddo, the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts, Dorland Mountains Art Colony, and was a California resident at Yefe Nuff. She has served on the selection committee for Kingsley and Kate Tufts Poetry Awards, a past mentor with AWP's Writer to Writer program. She is active with Write Girl in Los Angeles and writes for Ms. Magazine. For 2 years, she served her community as poet laureate and editor of the Altadena Poetry Review. Let's hear it for Elline. Hey.
Thank you so much. I wanted to say again, it is so exciting to be here, and my heartfelt thanks as well to Chris and Natasha. And I am so happy to join the Trio House Press family and to be here with my two co-launchies, Samina and Renee. It's wonderful. And I also just wanted to say, I know in the back of my book in the gratitude, I say, oh, it might seem odd to call a single author book a group project, but to me it really is. And this book wouldn't exist without the support of so many. My beloved East Pasadena poetry group that's been meeting for over 10 years. My other friends and colleagues in SoCal that have been a tremendous support to me. And I'm just really thrilled. And the book wouldn't be here without all of you as well. I know many are watching. So my book sort of was conceived in 2020 during the pandemic when my son was still young enough to read him fairy tales at night. And I began reading the grim fairy tale Hansel and Gretel to him. And it was such a time of incredible lostness that for some reason the tale became a kind of palimpsest to me, and I began to read into it, and it began to speak back to me. And I felt particularly intrigued how it kind of symbolized roles that girls and women move through in their lives, from being a young adolescent girl, kind of coming into her power, to a mother, to the crone figure of the witch. So I'll read a few poems in different characters' voices, starting with the first poem in the book, Gretel Looking Back. So it's in Gretel's voice. Crumbs jostled inside my brother's pocket, worried like coins, rubbed to plain metal. A face soothed, smoothed, then scattered. Inside my body, I knew I carried two pursefuls. On one side, the clasp just opening, ripening, readying to let a speck spiral down. I could see the witch's ribs were a bird cage, a flutter beating at the bars like a dying bird trying to get out. From his cell, my brother held out a bone to fool he was shriveled. I felt my blood thrumming, then ribboning, then rivering. When I pushed her head first into the flames, I was the one fattened with power. I had never been so bloodsure, so strong. The next poem is called Mother: in the Earth, and it is the figure of the mother speaking, trying to speak back to her children after she has been buried. I was rootstock, I was dirt, I made myself the air surrounding their mouths. When they lay on the ground, I was a round of moss pillowing beneath their sweaty heads. I willed the loam to cradle their bodies, longed to tap a finger from the underside out. I let the wind say, I am here. I let the night sound say, try to sleep. My bones settled deep beneath the grass. I was a mix of motes I tried to waft into the forest scent, the arms of branches, almost an embrace. And this poem is called The Woodcutter, and it is in his voice, the father's voice. Wife with flaxen hair, wife with emerald eyes, your breath rattled the dry gulf of your mouth, tongue cottoned with half knowing. Your hands reached for what? Laddering into air. I opened the window so, when ready, your soul could fly out. Body thin as a matchstick, I knew one last strike would set it to vapor, then mound to ash. I cut my hands around what was left and inhaled. Grief twisted me and I bent low into the hook of another's arms. Never did I think she would burn the sheets, sweep your dust out, cast a maze to send the boy and girl far. Never did I think I would be so weak you had to haunt. A sound low in my ears, a twitch at the base of each bone where I couldn't bear the flinch. Never did I think I could do it, send them to join you deep inside the forest dark. And this next poem is called The House Speaks. And again, as I began to turn the tale over and over in my mind, and different characters began to seem more and more archetypal to me, I realized the house was a character too, the witch's house that lures Hansel and Gretel in. So this is called The House Speaks from its point of view. Because she wanted it, I sugared and slivered, mapling like a tree veined with sticky sap. My walls latticed like a tart woven and streuzled to lure the boy and girl in. Inside, I kept a cot for weeping, a hall for shucking mud and angers, a stair wound up to an attic, packed like a headache ready to pound. The hearth beat my furious heart, embered then poked, drafting up the chimney's nose while the kettle wept its tears. She kept me, or I kept her. The windows whisper smeared, the floorboards clacked and tapped. Some nights my shoulders fell a little, trying to wrap the heat deeper around her like a childhood quilt. She talked to me. I shuddered back. So when I saw her go head first into the oven, I breathed deep as the fumes began to waft. There was her skirt poofed to acrid vapor, bile charring as her innards flung out. Her loose hair crisped and singed until she was bald, born again into air. Her clenched hands prickled as they clawed up my back, and I swallowed her voice, pleading to me as it crumbled and cracked. I'll read three more. I have it tagged. Dear Gretel. Dear Gretel, I wore a darkness that laced and latticed, interleaved my hair, its dusk like a ribbon, velvet yet torn. I tied it at my throat, let it knot and tangle the edge of my dress, unhemmed into scallops, drooping and raw. It brushed at my knees, a shadow that chased like a haint as I ran. That old anger bridled and bucked. I let it ride on my back until I found a way home. And this poem is called The Wild Blue Rain of June, and I consider it kind of a summer poem, but given it's October 1st and September is the hottest month here in Southern California, it feels like we're still right there in the heat. The Wild Blue Rain of June. Gold between trees like brushstrokes in a painting, tipping in sheen, heliotrope, hyacinth, air flecked with the scent released after spring. A green thicket wraps to a porch and open door, light bending in to reach the back wall. Inside, furrows of beds, white cotton and wool, a swaddle of muslin and the close weave of arms. Heat will cinch the air until the trees lean into each other again, and everything wraps into kin, a knitting again in fall. For now, globes of hydrangeas proffer their heads, radiating scent. Lilac and salvia, cones of delphiniums. The yellow tongue of the iris stripes its reach out. Mist prisms iridescent as the house shimmers in relief against summer sky. And the final poem in the book is called Terre Verte, which means literally green earth. And I was reading about color one day and feeling intrigued and found a small note that said terre verte is a color used by medieval Italian painters to paint underneath human figures as a kind of underpaint that you paint on top of. And I just love that idea so much of there being a kind of undercoat that connected to green earth in human figures when they were depicted. So that became a kind of guiding metaphor for the poem Terre Verte. Girl in a forest, girl on a lawn, legs a whir against a shadow of loam. Inside the canvas, green tinges below the albumin cup of her cheeks. Thin arms laid down by her sides, decorous, her veins filling with roots. She will lay against the curve of earth, dress breath billowing to sky. Thank you so much. So happy to be here.
Oh, thank you so much, Elline. I'm just I love how your poems can be kind of almost scary, like, like, but at the same time just so powerful, and I mean, there is so much in that story, and you really bring it all to light, that it's so much deeper than we probably think of, since a lot of us haven't thought about it since we were little. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And our final reader tonight is Samina Najmi. Sing Me a Circle, Love, Loss, and a Home in Time. We have Samina gave us a lot of essays when we first took this book. And so we have this version, but we have an extended version available as an ebook. So if you want even more, you can buy the ebook, and there's an extra section in that one. So Samina um, is in Fresno, California as well. We have kind of a West Coast heavy group today. So I will read your bio, Samina, and she's going to read one of my favorites in the collection tonight. So thank you, Samina, in advance. Samina Najmi teaches multi-ethnic U.S. literatures at California State University, Fresno. Her personal essays have appeared in over 30 literary magazines, including World Literature Today. Daughter of multi-generational displacements, Samina grew up in Pakistan and England and now calls Fresno, California home. Here she has watched with wonder her two children, her many students, and her citrus grow. Samina believes in Fresno sunsets, in everyone's 3 feet of influence, and in the power of language and literature to extend our reach beyond it. Take it away, Samina.
Thank you so much, Chris. And thank you for this evening, for everything, for taking a chance on Sing Me a Circle. I'm so grateful to Trio House Press, also to Natasha, the whole team, Cynthia. It's kind of surreal, this moment, and I love sharing it with Elline and Renee. And congratulations to you two again. So yes, this is the opening essay of the book, and it is one of my favorites as well. So I decided kind of at the last minute to read all of it. It's a triptych, so I'll read all 3 sections. 1. of fan belts and fathers. Someone who identifies as Dark Soul of Death 2 has a post on Yahoo Answers asking what a fan belt is. The post has elicited responses ranging from mirth to indignation, as well as a couple of patient attempts to engage with the query seriously. Dark Soul of Death 2 has offended some, not because everyone is expected to know what a fan belt is, but because the question, instead of being posed under Yahoo Autos, appears on the site's martial arts page. You mean like in a car? You've got to be kidding me. I've seen some questions posted in the incorrect section by accident, but damn, says Bujinkan Ninja. Another response begins teasingly, but goes on to offer a concrete description. It's a black belt that is attached to pulleys, one of which has a fan blade mounted to it that's attached on the water pump. As the belt spins, it will turn the fan's pulley, blowing air onto the vehicle's radiator. Then there's the commentator who offers 8 solid sentences of knowledgeable description and advice, only to end with the warning, don't ask auto questions on the martial arts page unless you like rude answers. Some of us lack a sense of humor. But I may be the one person to whom a fan belt question on a martial arts page makes sense. A fan belt is a black belt. Spend a little time browsing on the website of Black Belt magazine, and your hazy sense of the philosophy behind traditional East Asian martial arts is confirmed. It's about discipline, courage, and humility. Far from representing a Darwinian survival contest, the traditional martial arts emphasize rectitude and chivalry. They teach us about duty, loyalty, and sacrifice. And the Sifu, who models these virtues for us, who teaches by example, is in the Chinese tradition seen as a father. Black belt, fan belt, father. This is where they converge in a memory. I'm not among the knowledgeable when it comes to cars or martial arts, but I've never had to ask what a fan belt is, what it does, or what it is capable of. When I first heard the term, at 14 from my father, I learned of its dark power. I learned that such power is indifferent to its reach. And I learned how variably we humans respond when we find ourselves in the grip of its tyranny. It must have been a Saturday in 1978, shortly after we acquired our second-hand dark blue Toyota Corolla, because only my father had to head out to work that day. It was a winter's day by Karachi standards, which is to say that the sun warmed the morning up into the 50s. We were still huddled under our thick cotton blankets when Abu's shapely hand waved goodbye and he headed downstairs. We heard the metal gates of our house clank open, the car door slam shut, the engine start, purr, and stop. Funny sound, not really a purr at all, more like a strangled sort of gruffness. It restarts, same unfriendly sound, then stops. The car door opens again, and then a long silence. Panic in our hearts now. Abu is a heart patient whose parents died young. His own death has always seemed possible to us. Besides, he is prone to fainting, a phenomenon I now know in myself and my son as a vasovagal tendency, often triggered by the sight of blood, but mostly inexplicable. My 2 siblings and I toss off our blankets and run out to the balcony, our mother behind us. There's Abu, standing at the hood of the Toyota that never made it out of the gates. It's still parked in the small space between the concrete stairway and the metal gates that remain open in anticipation of its exit. Abu's head is bent over the open hood of the engine. We're relieved, then curious. We run down the concrete stairs, still in our pajamas. What's the matter with the car, Abu? Abu doesn't respond. His gentle brown hands continue to fumble around in the engine. When he finally looks up, we see the mix of pain and revulsion on his face. Then our eyes fall on the amorphous black and white fluff in his hands, black and white with red streaks. Kittens, he says, caught in the fan belt. Look what the blades of the fan can do. The kittens are in pieces, seeking shelter in the car engine, oblivious of the danger in their place of refuge. We scream and fly back up the stairs and into our blankets. We have quite forgotten about Abu's vasovagal vulnerability, what the sight of blood can do to him. Or maybe we know that self-indulgence is not an option for him in this moment, that he wouldn't abandon the scene if he could. Maybe we expect him, trust him, to stay put and deal with the bloody aftermath, to do his duty with chivalry, sparing us, to be the Sifu who models discipline, courage, and sacrifice. Whatever the case, we leave Abu standing there, alone by the open gates, holding the kitten bits in his shapely hands. 2. Rubina Najmi, who fights her way in and out. She's a 3-pound, 15-ounce baby born too soon. Born October 30th, 1966, before she's ready for the world or the world is ready for her. First in our family to be born in the Western Hemisphere. The doctors at London's Hammersmith Hospital sent her mother home without her. This baby's only chance is the incubator, they say. What a hopeful word, incubator, where good things, bright things, happy things hatch. The promise of feathered dreams taking flight. So the baby first sees the world through a sheet of glass, reaches out her dark brown hands this way, that way, this cold, hard glass. Glass between her and the warmth of human flesh, between her and the pulse of another heart. Because human contact could kill her, don't you know? Glass that makes gawkers of the family. They look from a distance, but must not touch. For a month, she lies in an incubator in a room in a hospital, box within box within box. But the newborn is a fighter. She fights for her breath and lives. And the doctors tell the mother, this child is a survivor. The survivor grows up in Karachi, a dark, brilliant child who never smiles in photographs. She's a toddler who eats fistfuls of dirt, a tween who throws things at her younger brother, a teenager who fights with her parents and believes she's a bad influence on her little sister, who spends weekends brooding in her room, the door shut and nobody knocking. She cries as she watches Chariots of Fire, its Olympic runners who reach the finish line against all odds. She becomes the first girl in the family to win a scholarship to a college in America. In 18 years, her family has grown cold, hard, and aloof. They watch from a distance, but refuse to touch. 3 months before it's time to leave for Smith College in Massachusetts, the survivor gets up on a chair in the bedroom of her Karachi home. She ties one end of her long cotton dupatta to the ceiling fan, the other around her neck, and kicks the chair from under her. 3. One flew over schoolgirls' heads. One hot and sticky day in Pakistan's coastal city of Karachi, the girls of the Cambridge section at St. Joseph's are filing back into their classrooms after recess. Exhausted from the Herculean endeavor to push through the mob of girls outside Abdullah's or Mrs. Vello's snack bars, clamoring for chili chips, ice cream soda, or milk toffees, we collapse on the wooden benches of our 8th grade classroom, envying those whose seats are directly beneath the ceiling fans. Our 40-odd pairs of hands reach for water bottles, even if the water in them is already tepid. The air circulated by the ceiling fans is much too warm but in time it will work its magic. Our uniforms will unglue from our backs. The semicircle of sweat beneath our short sleeves will fade, and the rivers edging our temples and hairlines will begin to evaporate. It's time for senior Miss Fikri's geography class. Through the haze of humidity and the pungent odor emanating from our semicircled sleeves, an odor whipped around the room by the ceiling fans, we command our minds to grasp how high and low pressure systems develop in the atmosphere. Suddenly, a sparrow swoops in through the open door, sending the girls aflutter. What on earth is the little bird doing here among us? How disruptive, how foolish. Was it tempted indoors by the relative cool of our high colonial ceilings, or overpowered by a freak exploratory impulse? Doesn't it know that some risks are not worth taking, some curiosities and yearnings best buried within us? Within seconds, the sparrow has realized its mistake. But unable to see its way out, despite multiple possibilities of escape, it becomes a winged frenzy. It darts from one end of the classroom to the other in blinding flashes, to the gasps of the girls who duck their heads, cover their ears, shut their eyes. Nobody wants to witness this degree of desperation. We all know it doesn't have to be this way, but none of us knows what to do about it, not even Miss Fikri. And in any case, it all happens so fast. Next thing we know, the intruding bird, so small, so afraid, so out of place, has fluttered straight into a ceiling fan and sliced itself between the blades that continue in their own circular frenzy. Down comes the sparrow, a bloodied pulp on the classroom floor. It lies as still now as it had pulsated with frantic life a moment before, an ounce of flesh and feathers at our feet. I wonder now why we hadn't all jumped to switch the fans off the moment the sparrow flew in among us. We might have saved its life. Could our own physical comfort have made us indifferent to the threat it faced? Perhaps the spectacle of the bird's vulnerability simply paralyzed us. Or did the danger fail to register because we failed to imagine it? I think about the sparrow's flight and fall, its impetuous, audacious venture into our world. I wonder if it had a moment's regret. Decades later, I can hear the desperate flapping of its fragile wings, but I have no memory of its cry. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Samina. That was amazing and so fun to hear out loud after reading it so many times to myself again. I've enjoyed so much listening to you all, and it's been really great. You all can unmute because we have some questions that I thought I would ask. And the first one, we had someone asking, Renee in particular, but I'm interested in knowing from all of you, why did you choose to read the specific section or story that you did? So Renee, would you like to lead us off?
Sure, sure. Great question. The reason I love this story so much is it is one of the crucial pivot points, like I said, not only in the book, but in my life, where I accidentally and for no good reason, one day woke up and discovered that I had some power.
I love that. Yeah. How about you, Elline?
Well, I was trying, I think, to give a little flavor of the different characters. So I wanted to read one poem in Gretel's voice and one in the mother's, one in the father, who in the tale is often just known as the woodcutter. And then I realized after I finished the book, there are quite a few house poems. But I like the one where the house speaks. And I realized, and I only realized it if you can believe this, as I was reading today. But in the very last poem, that is where the line "Girl in the Forest" lands in the book. So I wanted to offer the bookend too of the opening poem, the closing poem, and that title, where you find the title of the book embedded as well.
We had a fan of the witch poem. They
Oh,
really.
oh, that's great. There are actually quite a few witch poems, and again, I find the figure of the crone to be just enormously compelling in all kinds of ways.
Yeah, wonderful. How about you, Samina? Why did you choose Triptych?
Um, well, it has a special place in my heart. I didn't originally write it as a triptych. They were separate flash pieces. And when I shared, I think 2 out of 3 with my sister, she just found that juxtaposition really powerful. And then it was sometime later that I thought, wait a second, they're all 3 of them are saying the same thing, and about the violences in our lives, great and small, and what we do in the face of them. We all react differently, and so I thought it sets the scene for what's coming in a lot of ways.
Well, and
Great.
there's the recurring character of Rubina and yeah, so I think so too. It's the very first thing you encounter when you pick up the book as well. So yeah, there were all great reasons. All right, so I actually have a question for you, and I think I'm interested to hear what you have to say, all of you. So Trio House Press seeks to publish books that create empathy and understanding. That's part of our mission. I definitely think you're doing that in all of your books, but I'm interested to know, like, what do you hope a reader gains in empathy and understanding after finishing your book? Who wants to go first?
I'll
Oh,
go.
we're all being like, okay, go for it, Renee.
Um, so this is the book that I wish I had had when I was suffering the most at times in my life. And I think writing it was an act of courage and rebellion, but also I've come to see it as an act of empathy, because if one person can read this book and see themselves in this book and see that they can continue and that there could be brighter days ahead, and just to give them some hope, I my mission will be complete with the book.
That's awesome. How about you, Samina?
Well, um, I'd like to think, well, first of all, I love this mission of Trio House Press. It's very close to my heart. And one of the major reasons why I sought out Trio House, right? And it has never been more important, it seems to me, this mission, right? And I think that, or I hope that readers of whatever background, with very different experiences from mine, um, if they see themselves reflected here in some way, that's a point of connection across time, across space, across cultural differences, linguistic differences, and so on. And so, and I really do think that we have more things in common than not. So that would be very meaningful to me. And also, I think language does its work. So if we connect on some aesthetic level, like, I like that sentence or that image, that that too is a connection. And yeah, I'd be thrilled.
Mhm. Well, and you also are a professor of literature. So, do you see a connection with, like, because there are a few people who cross over between literature and creative writing, but sometimes we see them as these separate kind of things. So can you elaborate a little bit on that? Like, do you think your training and background in literature um, gave you a different perspective?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I I think, and someone else has said it much more eloquently, but I'm not going to remember right now who. But that I suppose looking back, all of the reading I was doing was related to the writing I would be doing, right? Even the scholarship, um, in a different way. So so I feel like yes, in those ways they're connected, the creative and the critical impulses. It's really kind of too bad that they're siloed in the way
Mhm.
that they are, as you said, quite often. Um, so um, so yeah, I really do think that that all the reading we do, so it informs our writing, and
Mhm.
maybe vice versa too.
Yeah. And Elline,
Um,
empathy and understanding.
Thank you. I think for myself, when this project first came to me, I think I said this in the Substack interview, I almost felt a little abashed. Like I've seen a lot of poems through the years that are like written persona poems written through the voice of past characters, historical characters, literary characters, kind of unknown figures, and I almost felt just a little bit like, oh, that's been done. But then I began, as the scholar I am at times, to research this more. Um, and the more I looked into renditions or renderings of the tale of Hansel and Gretel, the more I found. I mean, it was amazing how many screenplays and films and TV series, and even last month in August, I went to a dance performance called Sugar Houses that was based on Hansel and Gretel. I said, I have to go see this. And what I began to realize is that it offered an entry point to people to kind of enter the tale where they wanted or how they wanted. And maybe they saw themselves in the figure of the witch or a person in exile or who didn't conform to societal norms by being married, by having, kids, whatever it may be. Or maybe they understood complexities within a family system where there was death or divorce or a step parent or something complicated or some kind of rift in the fabric of the family. And I felt like in a way having this set piece of knowing this story allowed me to enter it. It gave a kind of permission to write what I wanted into it and to take what I could from it. And what I would hope is that that would do that for another reader, whether it's Hansel and Gretel or maybe they're rewriting the Cinderella story. There's a lot of that as well. I noticed when I was researching. Or another unknown or, well-known, known or unknown folk tale or fairy tale, and they can take that and enter it and again make it what they need it to be.
I have to tell you, Elline, since we have two Minneapolis people here, I was teaching Louise Erdrich's love medicine today,
Oh,
and Saint Marie is very much about is very much about Hansel and Gretel, right? So there are evocations there as well, and it's funny and it's deadly serious at the same time. I see Chris likes
I teach that
Erdrich.
all the time. I love
Yes,
that
right?
story.
wonderful. That's
Yeah,
so great.
Oh,
great.
yes, for sure. Well, we only have about 5 minutes left, and we had two questions. So I'm going to actually, they're both kind of about revision. So maybe I'll generalize them both. And one of them was specific to triptych. How did you revise it? How did you decide on the ordering of the three pieces, maybe? And then another question was, so I'll give you your choice, okay? And then the other question was, how, let's see, could you talk about your first readers and how you go about revising your work? So you can talk about early revision or later or whatever. I guess you can just talk about revising. So why don't we just do it again the same old way, Renee? Why don't we start with you?
I will take the former question rather than the latter because much of my revision was in a later stage. And I have to thank Mr. Richard Terrell because we spent a lot of quality time and drank a lot of caffeine and had really good conversations. We were very similar. We were both very direct people. But what he did was he challenged me to go beyond what we would call reporting the news. So this happened and this happened and this happened. And then I felt like this and then I moved on to really dig deeper and to do more reflection and be more vulnerable. And I would say that that was incredibly difficult, emotional, and physical work. Which I wasn't really expecting after I got the phone call from, Chris Beall called me and said they love my book. So, and it resulted in a much, much better book and a much more robust and nuanced book.
With a different title.
With a completely different title.
How about you, Samina?
Well, it took me 10 years to write the essays in Sing Me a Circle. So, my creative process is sort of a slow cook process in that way. But what that means is that usually there's not a whole lot of revision to do afterwards. But I'm intrigued by the question about triptych in particular, because it's very perceptive. And as I was saying, I didn't initially start out juxtaposing these three brief pieces in a triptych in a single essay. But then shout out to my writing group at the time, because we were rehearsing and preparing for my first AWP presentation that was also in LA, 2016, I want to say. And somebody said, so the order there was, yes, the fan belts and fathers first, and then the piece about Rubina came last, and the sparrow in the middle, and one of them said, Jackie said, you're going to read this, and it ends on such a dark note, with Rubina kicking the chair from under her, and then you're going to be like, thank you. And, it's going to be very awkward, is what she said. And another person from the writing group, Phyllis, said, how about if we were talking about poetry sandwich, but, so how about if that really, that piece about Rubina goes in the middle. And I have to say too, it was a breakthrough moment for me in the sense that I think that's when I realized, okay, I think I can do this. I think I can write the tough stuff. I can do it through images. So it freed me in some ways. And I think that's also part of the reason triptych is particularly close to my heart. Thank you for those questions.
Yeah. And Elline?
Well, I was thinking of two things to the revision question. One is I would say anyone knows who writes. You sit down with your idea about what you're going to write, and I would think, okay, I need a poem for Hansel now, or I need a poem for this other character. But I think the best writing comes when you're following the writing, if that makes sense. I just taught a workshop at my local library here in Altadena, and we read the poem by George Ella Lyons, Where I'm From, and she has a wonderful snippet, it's on her website, about let the writing lead you. And it's something I've also heard George Saunders says a lot. I was just thinking they both have George in their name. There must be something to that. But I felt like I revised the poems to a deeper place when I trusted what I was hearing and I kind of let the characters lead me. So I knew I had this idea, but then I was able to sink deeper into it. And I would say that was the first level of revision, to let go of my expectations and go where I was led. But then the second level, or even third or fourth, of course, is taking the writing to my cherished and trusted writing groups and having them help me find the balance between the strangeness that I knew I wanted to be in the poems and clarity, because I also want people to understand what's going on in the poems, and simply getting feedback from people familiar with the project, but also open to, again, the voice that was coming through.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, we have hit 8:01, so it's time for us to say goodbye. But if any of you want to say anything before we go, I'll give you the floor. Any last words for our audience?
Just a big thank you for being here from all different time zones. Really appreciate it.
Likewise, I would say to people everywhere tuning in, it's one of the magic, I think, magics of Zoom that has stayed with us since the pandemic.
Mhm.
I agree. My heart's full of gratitude to Trio House and my fellow writers and to everybody who came tonight.
Well, wonderful. And this video will be up on our YouTube channel. So those of you who are here, if you want to recommend it to friends, just send them on over to our YouTube channel. So thank you very much. Thanks to all of you who came. Thank you so much to our authors, Elline, Samina, and Renee. And I just can't wait to see what's next for your wonderful books.
And thank you, Chris and
Thank
Natasha.
you.
Right. Bye, everybody.